Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Modesty's Mortgage Masterclass. This is session number 20. Yeah, a landmark session for us on this Mortgage Masterclass session. So, we're here on episode 20, and thanks to all of you who have stood by us all this while and all along. We just started it like an experiment, and then gradually we're getting used to the culture of coming here every Wednesday to educate ourselves on everything mortgage and property, basically. Okay, so I remain your man, Ikenna Umezidike, the director of Modesty Financial Consultants Limited, based in Luton, United Kingdom. We specialize in mortgage services, financial and investment advisory services, and financial consulting in general. So what we do here every Wednesday is that we talk to you about the latest happenings in the mortgage industry, and we educate you on things you need to know around mortgage and property peculiar to the UK property and mortgage market. Okay, so today we're going to be digging deep into the stamp duty holiday, because that is the in thing now. That is what is on everybody's lips. That is what everybody's talking about now. Since last week Wednesday, when the Chancellor Rishi Sunak made that announcement about the stamp duty relief or the stamp duty holiday that took effect immediately from that announcement, with immediate effect from that announcement up until 31st of March 2021. So everybody has been talking about it a lot. Lots and lots of questions have been asked about it. Lots of clarifications are being sought. So today we're going to be digging deep into that stamp duty holiday and picking it piece by piece and just dissecting it and clearing up, every confusion or every question you might have around that holiday, what it means to you, what it means for the UK economy, why that decision was made, the implications of that decision, and then analyzing also what that decision would do to the UK economy and to the UK property market. So that's what we are here to do. And that's why I have devoted this whole session to just digging deep into that stamp duty holiday. That's how important it is. And just to also give you a very good understanding of the background, we're even going to dig into the historical effects of past stamp duty holidays. If something like this has happened before, if it has, how did it turn out? We're going to dig deep into all those things. So get ready for a bumper package today. Okay, so like I said, last week Wednesday, during my show, during the session last week, I talked about this. I said that on that day, an announcement was expected, and the Chancellor was expected to talk about this stamp duty holiday, and it's expected that properties up to £500,000 will be tax duty exempt. And then not long after I finished my session, the announcement was made. You see? So people, don't joke with people like us who have got information on things that are going to happen even before they happen. So I spoke about that last week. I said the Chancellor is expected to make this announcement, and this is what it's going to look like, but we haven't got the full details yet. And then as I was just finishing the show, the breaking news came. The announcement has been made, and exactly like we predicted it. Okay, so if you need to predict the lottery winning numbers, you know who to call. You know who to call. Okay, so let's talk about this. What does this stamp duty holiday mean? First of all, stamp duty is a kind of tax that is paid by anyone who buys property in the UK. But today we're going to be talking about specifically properties bought in England and Northern Ireland, because those are the two parts of the UK that this new regulation, this new law, or this new tax relief or policy affects properties bought in England and Northern Ireland. So if you buy property anywhere in the UK, you are expected to pay a stamp duty. So that stamp duty is layered according to different levels of transaction and according to different according to the valuation or the value of the property. That's how you pay the stamp duty tax. Okay, so before now, first-time buyers who are buying properties for the first time, tax duty exempt for properties that are worth up to £300,000. So if you are a first-time buyer before now and you're buying a property worth up to £300,000, you don't pay any stamp duty at all. Yeah, if you are buying property that is, if you're not a first-time buyer, the first £125,000 is stamp duty exempt, and then after that it's layered according to 2%, 5%, 8%, and it goes on like that up to above £1.5 million. So what the Chancellor did was to now say he's raising that threshold of nil rates of stamp duty from £300,000 to £500,000. So if you're a first-time buyer and you're buying a property worth up to £500,000, where you would have paid, say up to £4,000 in stamp duty, now you are not going to pay anything. Okay, if you bought property up to £500,000 as a first-time buyer. Now, this is not only applicable now to first-time buyers; it's applicable to next-time buyers. So if you've had a property before and now you want to buy another property, providing that your previous property gets sold. If you get rid of your previous property, you don't have any other property in the background, and the next property you are buying becomes your only or your sole residential property, as long as it's up to £500,000 in worth, you are not going to pay anything in stamp duty. That is what this new policy is all about, and it took effect from last week Wednesday, and it's until the 31st of March 2021. So it's it's a limited period of time for that relief to last. So what this means is, by virtue of this announcement, an average savings of £4,500 will be made by property purchasers or by house buyers. So the average saving based on this announcement alone on stamp duty tax is £4,500 on average. So that means that £4,500 is extra money in the pocket of anyone who is buying a property, who's going to make that savings. So even if you've got a property before, what it means now is that people who are looking to move, people who are looking to upgrade, maybe buying a bigger property, and they've been scared of what the tax implication would be in terms of stamp duty. Now they know that any property up to £500,000, there will be no stamp duty payable on that, and then they can go ahead and make that move. And then even for first-time buyers, there is now more room for them to wiggle in case they want to, extend their ambition a little bit, stretch their ambition a little bit, to buy a bigger property or more expensive property. So if they were put off initially by the amount of stamp duty that they would have had to pay, that is out of the way, because up to £500,000, you don't pay anything. The essence of this policy is to get Britain moving, to get people moving, to get people to be bold enough to make that move, to say, yeah, I want to buy this property, so I'll go out there and buy it, because the tax implication the burden has been lessened by virtue of this announcement. Okay, so that's what the Chancellor hoped to achieve by that announcement. So now, for second homes and for people who are buying for investment purposes like buy to let, there has been the question of how does it apply? What does that mean for them? So if you've got if you are buying your second home, that means you don't want to get rid of the previous property, you still want to keep it, or maybe an additional home, you still want to keep your previous properties and you're buying an additional home. The relief applies to you as well, but you just have to pay 3% in stamp duty as against 5% that you would have paid initially. So this relief now brings down the amount of stamp duty payable for up to £500,000 worth of property for those who are buying second homes, or for those who are buying to invest, like buy-to-let investors. So initially was 5%, but now because of this relief, instead of paying 5%, you now pay 3%, which is a significant saving as well for those who are buying properties to invest. Okay, so rather than the 5%, you're not going to pay 3%. But then, if you are buying properties that are more expensive, that's where the detail lies now. If you're buying properties that are more expensive than above 500,000 pounds and above 500,000, it means you're going to pay more in stamp duty, because now there is 3% added to the already existing strata of stamp duty land tax. So now this is how it will go. From 0 to 500,000 pounds, you don't pay anything, right? So for additional property purchasers or for buy-to-let investors, the way it is now calculated is that after 500,000 pounds, the next 425,000 pounds on top of the property price, you are going to pay 8% stamp duty. That is after the 500. So it then means that from 501,001 pounds, from 500,001 pound up to 925,000 pounds, you pay extra 8% on that instead of 5% initially. Then on the next 575,000, which is the portion of that property price that ranges from 925,000 up to 1.5 million pounds, you pay 13%, yeah, as against 10% that it was initially. Then anything above 1.5 million pounds on top, the stamp duty on top of that is now 15% as against 12%. So you can see now that even though the policy favors a lot of those who are at the lower end of the property ladder, buying the properties up to 500,000 pounds, those who are buying the more expensive properties are made to pay more, especially if you're buying as a second home, or if you're buying to let. All right, so which is fair enough anyway. So it means you've got lots of money. The government wants a little bit of that. Now, so buy-to-let investors, buy-to-let investors, whether you are buying in individual names or you're buying in a company name, the relief applies to you. So, and for first-time buyers, those who have owned a home before, who are buying a new home, and who are not keeping the old one, they will be treated the same as the first-time buyers, meaning you will not pay any stamp duty on the first 500,000 pounds value of that property. So this is how the first-time buyers and the next-time buyers who are not retaining their previous property, this is how their own stamp duty tax will be calculated. Up to 500,000 pounds will be 0%. The next 425,000 pounds, which is the portion between 500,001 pound to 925,000 pounds, the stamp duty on that will be 8%. The next 500,000 pounds up to that is between 925,001 pound up to 1.5 million. The stamp duty on that will be 13%. So that's how it's going to work. And above 1.5 million is 15%. So once you cross that threshold of 500,000 pounds, it gets more expensive. That's how it's been structured now. Okay, so why did the Chancellor do this? Why did Rishi Sunak decide to announce this policy? You see, there has been a call for this stamp duty land tax holiday since April, even while the UK was on lockdown. There have been a lot of lobbying going on, and there have been a lot of people calling for this stamp duty holiday to be introduced the moment the lockdown is eased, because the lockdown practically brought the property market and the property in sector to a halt, to a grind, because a lot of the activities that facilitates the sale of properties or property transactions are done face to face. And because of the lockdown, face-to-face interactions were very were just completely absent. You cannot go and view a property. You cannot send a surveyor to go and survey it. Workers cannot come in there and work on the property and all that. Hi, Williams. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming on. Right. So, so because of these physical restrictions, the property sector was practically brought to a halt. Now, you see, by Zoopla's calculation, Zoopla is the second largest property sales and lettings platform in the UK after Rightmove. You know, by Zoopla's calculation, right? Property transactions could drop by as much as 50% this year if the government did nothing. Property transactions could drop by as much as 50% by their own calculation if the government did nothing. So, and if that happens, it could have cost the treasury up to £4 billion in revenue in stamp duty alone. So, assuming that this is just assuming the house prices don't change. So the theory, therefore, is that a tax break for home movers or for home buyers, for potential home movers via a stamp duty break, it will encourage people to move. It will encourage people to get on with the property transactions that they want to do, especially now that it's within a limited period. It then means that people now know that this thing will not last forever. So a lot of people will now be very keen on finalizing their property transactions as quickly as possible to make sure it's within this stamp duty holiday period. So you see, some people actually argue that, listen, these transactions were going to happen anyway. So this policy is just about bringing forward transactions that are going to happen anyway. But then, if it brings the transactions forward, that's good for the economy. It means the economy is going to jumpstart and kickstart quicker than it would have done. So if people were thinking of delaying the transactions, they will now say, okay, let me bring these transactions forward, and when they bring it forward, it helps jumpstart the economy quicker. So it's not even if they're going to happen anyway, but they're going to be brought forward. It's still a win-win, for the economy. You see. So stamp duty holiday can really boost transactions and property activities in property industry, as evidence have shown. So now, even with the difference in house prices across the country, across England and other parts, if one part of the country suffers in terms of house prices and house recession in the property sector, if one part suffers, it will have a ripple effect on the other parts of the country. So it's important that this particular policy was brought in place so it can level up things, and every part of the economy will feel the impact of the jump starting of the economy. And it shows you the important part and the important role that the property industry plays in terms of jump-starting the economy and what it contributes to the economy. So because of this, a lot of other sectors of the economy are going to benefit from that. So you see, the treasury will suffer a significant loss in revenue if they didn't do anything. But even the stamp duty holiday will cost the treasury a lot in terms of loss of revenue from stamp duty. With this holiday, the treasury will lose a lot of money. But then compare that to the £39 billion that the government has spent on the furlough scheme for 3 months, right? Now, if the government continues on that furlough scheme without doing something that would jumpstart the economy, that's going to cost the government and the treasury a lot more. So the treasury would have made a calculated attempt to say, why don't we try and jumpstart the economy and lose this money for a while, and then the economy will be better off for it in the longer term, and then more money will now come into the treasury. But then this money is not actually lost. Yeah, this money is not actually lost, because it means that those savings that people have made will be spent in other parts of the economy, in other wider areas of the economy. So that is the expectation of the government, that when people save this money, they will go on and spend this money somewhere else in other parts of the economy, so that the wider economy will not benefit from this singular policy. So the stamp duty holiday policy isn't just about encouraging people and helping them achieve their dream move to their dream homes. It's also about the network effects of that move. And when we talk about the network effect of that move, when somebody buys a home and moves home, do you know how much impact that has? Think about the redecoration of the property. You might employ the services of interior decorators who do the painting and everything that has to do. You will need to switch your utilities. If the roof needs doing, you call the builders to come and do the roof. You try to decorate the garden and make it look lovely. That means a visit to the garden shops or to the DIY stores. If you've got things to hang, you've got to visit the DIY shops and work on the property. You've got to buy furnitures, appliances, so you can see how all these are interlinked. And that's basically what the government is expecting to happen. And that is what the government is looking for people to spend that extra savings on. The expectation of the government is not for people to just say, okay, now I can now buy a £500,000 worth of property instead of a £350,000 worth of property, because I won't pay any stamp duty on that. What the government really wants people to do is to go out and spend these savings. To say, okay, yeah, now if I can save 4,000 pounds on stamp duty, I can get myself a new sofa, I can get a new fridge, I can get a new TV, I can get a new bed. You think about the things you can do with that money. That's what the government wants you to go and do, to go and spend it. And if that money is spent in the wider sector of the economy, the whole economy is now galvanized, and the whole economy becomes better for it. So that's what the government is expecting this impact to be, and that's why the Chancellor did this. But then, who now are the real beneficiaries of this relief, of this stamp duty holiday? So see, buyers, people who are buying properties, estate agents, property developers, people like us in the mortgage industry, real mortgage brokers, mortgage professionals, and all the people who are associated with property sector and property building. These are the people who are really going to benefit from this relief, because the property sector has been on halt, practically been halted throughout the lockdown. So this is good news to everybody who is associated with the property industry. It's not just about the builders and the buyers of the property, or those who are buying the property. It's about everybody who is linked in one way or the other with the property sector. So this is great news, because that means that people can now go out there and start, buying. And activities have started increasing already by virtue of this announcement. So we're seeing estate agents busier. They've been busy even since the lockdown was eased in the property sector on the 13th of May. And now with this announcement, activity has really increased. So people are now willing to bring their properties to the market to sell, because they can now move to a bigger property like they've always wanted to. If they were put off by the stamp duty implication of moving home, now that decision has been taken care of. They can now put their property on the market. So it means more properties will now become available for sale. More properties will now be put forward for sale, and then people who want to buy will now be willing to go and buy, because there is, it's almost like the shackles are off. So buyers at the lower end of the property market will be more delighted for this move, especially, even though some people will still, there will be no change in some other areas, because, for example, first-time buyers, they were stamp duty exempt anyway, up to £300,000. So increasing it to £500,000, those first-time buyers who weren't even going to buy a property of up to £500,000, of more than £300,000, nothing changes. But think about those who wanted to move home, or those first-time buyers who who wanted to buy a property worth more than £300,000. Think about how this will impact them positively. They'll be buzzing, with that. So you see, for first-time buyers who wanted to buy a property of £300,000 or less, there will be no change. Nothing changes. But that move of even taking it to 300,000, the threshold of £300,000 alone, since 2017, this policy has helped about 214,000. Last year alone, 2018-19, about 214,000 people, first-time buyers, benefited from this stamp duty exemption. So in 2018-19, 214,000 first-time buyers were helped to buy their properties without having to pay a stamp duty. That's astronomical. That's very, very significant. And that means the first-time buyers are really, being encouraged to get on and buy their dream home. Now they're even being encouraged to dream higher. So if you can afford to buy a bigger property, go ahead and buy it. That's what the government is saying. And if you live in a property and you want to move, you want to sell your existing property, bring it to the market, sell it, upgrade to a bigger property, and you have nothing to pay if it's worth up to £500,000. So apart from first-time buyers, right, stamp duty actually may be payable. If you take first-time buyers out of the equation, stamp duty may be payable on about 85% of all property transactions when you take first-time buyers out of the equation. So even though the impact of this tax is not the same across the country due to the wide variations of average house prices geographically, I mean, if you go up north to the northern part of England, house prices there are far lower than when you come down south, around London and southeast and all that. Okay, so there's a wide variation in average house price across the country. So even with that wide variation, if you take first-time buyers out of the equation, there might be stamp duty payable on about 85% of the property transactions. And this is just the evidence of this is shown by the stamp duty data as at 2018-19. So the stamp duty data of 2018-19 shows that about 72% of the stamp duty revenue. I'm just going to give you an indication of how wide, the gap is between the north and the south in terms of average house prices and how properties are valued in these two regions. About 72% of the stamp duty revenue in 2018-19 was generated by buyers of properties in London and Southeast alone. 72% of the stamp duty revenue was generated by, through stamp duty paid by buyers of properties in London and the Southeast. 72%. So you see, in London, Southeast, and the Midlands, the proportion of transactions that were stamp duty free, that were stamp duty exempt, was just less than 5% in 2018-19, right? The proportion of transactions that were stamp duty exempt were less than 5%. Means that about 95%, more than 95% of the property transactions that took place in London, Southeast, and the Midlands were subject to stamp duty. They paid some kind of stamp duty on that. So you can, but meanwhile, in the north of England, more than 40% of the transactions there did not pay any stamp duty. Did not. So you can see the discrepancy, the significant discrepancy between the average property price in the south and the north, and where majority of the revenue from stamp duty is coming from. So now, according to Zoopla's data again, the greatest beneficiaries of the stamp duty relief that was announced by the Chancellor are in people who are buying in affordable areas around London and its environs. So, according to their own data, about 95% of the transactions in that area will be stamp duty exempt. So the biggest beneficiaries of the stamp duty exempt policy of the Chancellor, right, within London and its surroundings, people who are looking to buy properties in those affordable areas, in 95% of the cases, they will benefit. They will not pay any stamp duty, right? But then, already, even before the announcements, up north, over 40% of transactions that were concluded there did not even include any stamp duty. But then, so that would tell you how significant this is for especially people who are buying properties down south here in England. Okay, so let us look at what's happened to stamp duties historically, and whether this kind of policy have been used before, stamp duty reliefs or stamp duty holidays, has it been used before, and what were the impacts? You see, previous stamp duty holidays have worked, but not all the time and not in all situations. I'm just going to give you a couple of instances of when stamp duty holidays have been used and how it's affected, or what the impact was on the economy, on the house prices, on the housing markets then. You see, during the recession of 1991-92, stamp duty holiday was announced. It was announced then simply because the housing markets slumped, and it was in the midst of very high interest rates. So the government then announced a stamp duty holiday, and they raised the threshold from £30,000 to £250,000. That's significant. That's even more. That's like 8 times more than 8 times the threshold then it was raised. But this time around, it was even like 4 times the threshold that's been raised, from 125 to 500,000. But then they raised the threshold by 8 times, from 30,000 to 250,000 pounds. They raised the threshold. So the average house price then was just about 50,000 pounds. So it was a very critical situation then, and the government needed to jumpstart and kickstart the economy because of the recession then. So what happened was that despite this intervention by the government in 1991-92, housing transactions in 1992 were still lower than they were in 1991. But then, and house prices still fell. But then you can argue that if the government hadn't done anything, then it could have been worse. Yeah, even though housing transactions were still lower in 1992 than they were in 1991, even with the intervention, and house prices still fell then. But then what would have been the situation if nothing was done? You can imagine that it could have been worse. But by looking at it, you might just say, well, it didn't work because it didn't have the effect that it was expected to have. But just imagine if nothing was done, how bad it could have been. Then again, in 2008-2009, stamp duty holiday was introduced again during the financial crisis. And then stamp duty was at 1%. Even in 1991-92, the stamp duty rate then was 1%. So 2008-2009, stamp duty rate was still at 1%. So when this relief or this stamp duty holiday was introduced in the 2008-2009 financial crisis period, the relief, the threshold was then raised from 125,000 to 175,000 pounds, and more expensive houses saw their rates at 3 to 4%. So the more expensive houses then were charged at 3 to 4% as at 2008-2009. And then the average house price at that time was at £175,000. So how did that impact the property market or the economy then? The impact was that in 2009, the transaction levels in house purchase transactions fell by 5%. Yeah, but before you scream that, oh, it didn't work again, in 2000 it fell by 5%. But then compare it to the previous year of 2008, when it fell by 44%. Yeah, so you can see that from minus 44 to minus 5 is a significant improvement, really, if you look at it that way. Yes, it still fell, but it was a significant improvement. So it showed that the economy was gradually picking up, and that impact was being felt, even though they were not out of the negatives yet. And then come 2010, there was now a significant shift. In 2010, there was now a 3% rise in transaction level. So the whole thing could be as a result of price adjustments and then some kind of green shoot in the economy, right, showing that the economy was picking up. So the economy was on an upward slope by virtue of that stamp duty intervention. So it then means that other parts of the economy started receiving attention, and people started spending because of that. Yeah. So the effect of that in 2009 was that, yeah, it's kind of helped to bring the economy back to life. And then transactions in housing and house purchases increased by 3% in 2010. So you can see how the slope moved from minus 44 in 2008 to minus 5 in 2009, and then plus 3 in 2010. Right. So finally, more about this current stamp duty regime. You see, the current historic reform of stamp duty was actually started in 2014, when the government kind of transformed the way and reformed the way stamp duty was charged and the way it was paid. So the reform that it took now, basically from a flat level to a layered level according to house prices. And this reform effectively cut the tax bill of homes that are valued up to £940,000. And these homes form 95% of the households in the UK. So it effectively cut their tax bill in property purchase, but it raised the tax for more expensive homes. So the reform of this tax, of this stamp duty land tax that the government embarked on in 2014, basically saw 95% of households save on stamp duty, because it was now based on layered prices of houses instead of a flat rate. But the more expensive homes that cost more than £940,000, basically paid more in tax. So if you compare the historic changes, now you can see that in 2009, the most expensive stamp duty band was 4% in 2009. But now, the most expensive stamp duty band is about 15%. And from next year, overseas purchasers of UK properties will pay stamp duty of up to 17% from next year. Yeah, so if you know of anyone who lives abroad who wants to buy property, tell them to come and buy property now, because from next year it could rise up to 17% in stamp duty if you're an overseas buyer buying property in the UK. Okay, so what this all means is that this relief, or this stamp duty holiday, will help jumpstart the UK economy. Increase in the volume of transactions on properties and property purchases will also mean that other parts of the UK will receive, a boost. The artisans, the electricians, the builders, the developers, and everyone will benefit from this. Okay, so you see, according to Rightmove, about 175,000 prospective sellers are now enticed to come back to the market. They stayed away from the market due to lockdown because of the physical restrictions that existed due to lockdown. So now they will be enticed to come back to the markets, and they'll be enticed to bring their properties back to the markets because of the stamp duty relief and the stamp duty holiday. So there has been a surge in property activities since the lockdown was eased in property sector on May the 13th, and that surge is now expected to continue by virtue of this announcement. But the little worry there is what will happen after this stamp duty holiday has ended on the 31st of March 2021. Would there be a depression in the housing market? Will it result into the housing market now slumping even further because people will no longer be interested in buying properties then because there's no more incentive for them to buy? Or will people continue to buy anyway even after that? And the good thing is this stamp duty holiday is applicable to you even if you have exchanged but you have not completed. So even if you exchange contracts before the July the 8th but you have not completed, you can still take benefit from this, right? As long as you complete within this holiday period of July 8th to 31st of March 2021, then you are eligible for that and you will benefit from that. So it's something that you have to look at if you fall within that category. Some people might want to bring that transaction forward instead of delaying it. And by bringing it forward, they are bringing forward the jump-starting of the economy as well. Okay? So guys, this is how much time would allow us to do today. And I hope this has been useful to you and we've been able to dig deeper into this stamp duty issue, and you have been able to get a better grasp and a better understanding of the whole stamp duty scenario, how it impacts the economy, how it impacts the housing market, and I hope you can now make informed decision based on what you've heard. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be with you again on Monday when we come back for our Modesty's Money Masterclass, and next week Wednesday again when we come back for our Modesty's Mortgage Masterclass. Until then, you can visit my YouTube channel and subscribe. There are loads more stuff and content for you to bite your teeth into on my YouTube channel. Just search my name, Ikenna Music, on YouTube, and let's connect there and watch everything else that we've done in the past on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. God bless, and see you again next time. Bye.